Good evening to everybody from a cold, wet Melbourne. The winter weather has returned, so we'll have to warm ourselves up with some meditation. So we'll begin as usual with a bit of quiet meditation. Please find a comfortable posture. Someone asked today about the benefits of sitting up straight, because the Buddha did encourage us to sit up straight when we meditate. And you find it's a very both physically and mentally energizing posture when you sit straight with a straight back, as straight as you can. If you've had a lifetime of sitting with a curved or bent back, then it's harder, but you can use your meditation partly just to become more aware of your physical body, your posture, and try to push up from the base of your spine during the sitting. You find this energizes your practice, can help you to stave off sleepiness, because you're putting effort into your posture. Can help you to concentrate more in the present moment, because you're mindful of your posture. And of course it has many health benefits, developing good posture. But having said that, our priority is developing mindfulness and wisdom. Sati, sampajanya, sati and panya. These are the two most useful qualities that we're bringing up as we meditate. And our effort, which is another useful quality, is directed towards becoming mindful of an object. So the object I usually talk about is the breath. But if you have another meditation technique, object you use, that is fine. But if you're practicing mindfulness of breathing, bring your attention to the feeling or the sensation of the breath at one place in the body. I usually pick the tip of the nostrils. It's interesting to note that when you feel or sense the breathing, say the in-breath coming in at the tip of your nostrils, you can sense the breath, which is just air, which is a gas. You sense it because of the movement and the friction with your nose, which is, and it's the solid part of the nose which the breath is rushing past, and so you get contact and you get sensation. So the solid part of the nose is obviously not a gas, it's not air, it's what we call the earth element. The Buddha used the word patavi dhatu. Because there's the earth element, the solidity of the body, in this case the nose, then you can sense the breath, because you sense the cold, cool air coming past the solid part of the nose. And you also notice the movement of your lungs as they rise and expand with the in-breath. And then as they deflate, shrink back. So the lungs have a certain amount of the earth element in them. There's the air element coming in, and the job of the lungs is to oxygenate the blood. So even if you're not a scientist or doctor, it doesn't matter, you can get the basic ideas that we breathe in to bring oxygen to the body, and that comes through the lungs, goes into the blood. Every blood cell needs oxygen, and then those blood cells go all around the body, up to the head, down to the stomach, down to the legs, the toes. So this air element that we're now focusing on with observing the in-breath, the out-breath, is actually traveling all around the body. The fact that we can sit here and that we can sit straight is because we've also got, say, a skeleton. We've got the back bones, the spine, and the other bones in the body that help to keep the body up. We have muscles, we have other parts of the body which are solid or more solid. So we are not only noticing the breath element, or the air element, but also the solidity of the body as we focus on the breath. And the oxygen we get from the breath goes into the blood, and that obviously is mainly the liquid element. You also notice the temperature of your body. If you are outside here in Melbourne in the mountains where we are, the air is cold, so you notice cold air coming in. If you're mindful of your breathing, keeping the breath in mind when you're outdoors. Or you notice the warmer air when you come indoors. And then you notice the out-breath is also warm from your body, because your body has heat, temperature. So just as you're becoming mindful of the in-breath and the out-breath at the tip of your nose, you can also become aware of the four elements, the basic or primary physical elements that make up a human being. Earth, air, fire, water. Or solidity, cohesion, extension, and temperature. And the Buddha noted that none of these elements are a person or a being that exists on them by themselves. What we call a human being, me, myself, is a combination of these four natural elements. But these natural elements which you find in the world, in nature, they don't really have an owner. They come together temporarily due to the power of karma. So a human being not only has four physical elements, but also has consciousness, quality of knowing, or the mind. But that can also be treated as an element of nature. It's just a quality of nature. The last element is the agasatatu, the space element, the fact that everything in the body has a gap, between it and everything else. The obvious space element is, say, where you have space around your organs, or your mouth has space in it, your nostrils have space in it because you breathe in through the mouth or the nose. Your ears have space, a cavity which allows sound to travel in, and so on. That space is also not a being or a person, it's just the space element. So consciousness is an element, space is an element, and then the 4 physical elements. All these 6 things are not actually a being or a person. They come together and appear to be a person, but as you meditate further, deepen your understanding, become more mindful, more peaceful, you will probably notice more and more the impersonal nature of these different elements, and how the idea of a person is something we create. We create this idea of a person partly through external stimulus. Other people reinforce the idea that we're a person, a solid person with a name and a personality. And then we ourselves internally create the idea of a person, sense of self. But in one way you could say that is just the mind creating the idea of self and then grasping hold of these elements with a view that, oh, this is me, mine, myself. So going back to the breath, you could ask the question here, who does the breath belong to as you're watching it go in, go out of your body? And this air around you, does anyone really own that? Here in Australia, we could say, oh, this is Australian air. Maybe one day they'll be bottling it and selling it. Australian air from the Yarra Ranges, the best air in the world. It might be better than some places where there's more pollution. If you're in a city somewhere, you might find the air quality is not so good. But who owns this air? Well, ultimately no one. Air is just air. Earth is just earth. Temperature is just temperature. Water is just water. So as we become more mindful, the Buddha encouraged us to contemplate. In one way to develop more insight and understanding is contemplate the elements that make up this person, or what we take as a person. To see really they're not a person, they're existing elements in nature, but they don't start as a person or a being. At most they come together temporarily, you could say. They come together, combine together as a human being, but then they go back to the nature. You breathe in and then you breathe out again. So the various gases and air element goes out again into the world. You eat food and then you go to the toilet. You drink water, you go to the toilet. Heating and cooling is going on all the time in your body. Sometimes too hot, sometimes too cold. If we get too hot, too cold, then we get ill. So the body quite naturally tries to keep an even temperature. But eventually all these elements go back to nature. However much we might cling to them as me, mine, myself, you can't do that. Like you can't just breathe in, say, okay, this breath is now mine, and not breathe out. If you breathe in and don't breathe out, you die. You can't just eat and then not go to the toilet. Again, you die of constipation or something else. You just drank water but never went to the toilet, you gradually become bloated and swell up like a big bag. And if temperature goes off the scale either one way, either too hot or too cold, we die. Even if we live a healthy life, which that's what we wish for, eventually we die through old age or sickness, and then these elements go back to nature. So we compare the body as rented accommodation rather than an owned house. It's just temporary dwelling place for the mind, for consciousness. And it's a conditioned thing. The body is changing with the different causes, conditions, different factors. It's aging. Sometimes it's healthy, sometimes not. It's quite fragile, easily affected by the environment, affected by different things surrounding us, sometimes by other people, cause us harm. So eventually these elements that come together temporarily and we borrow, as it were, they go back to nature, we lose them, so they're not really ours. And this is a reflection we can bring up every day with the breathing or just observing, learning about our own body, and seeing it's what we call not self, anatta. Just take a few more moments to observe the in and out breath in a very natural, impartial way till you hear the sound of the bell.